fellow sons and daughters of Africa, I stand before you not as a stranger to your pain, nor as a guest in your struggle. I stand before you as your mirror, your echo, your voice that refuses to be silenced. I did not come to comfort you with lies. I came to awaken you with truth, the kind of truth that burns, that pierces, that dares to say what many fear to whisper. This is not just another speech. This is not entertainment. This is a warning, a trumpet sounding in the night, a final call to those who still believe that someone else will save Africa. I tell you now, no one is coming. No power, no organization, no savior is coming to rescue us. Africa must stand up, and if she does not, she will fall forever. They have stolen our gold, our diamonds, our oil, and now they want our minds. They have rewritten our history, reshaped our education, dictated our economics, and corrupted our politics. And we have clapped for them, we have thanked them, we have begged them while sitting on the riches they envy, we have allowed ourselves to be deceived over and over again, but today I do not speak to the cowards. I speak to the lions, to the fire-blooded youth who still believe in justice, to the women whose voices shake empires, to the men who still know that honor matters. I speak to those who are tired of kneeling, tired of selling, tired of surviving. I speak to those who are ready, not tomorrow but now, to stand. They told us we were free. They told us the colonial era had ended, that independence had arrived, and that Africa could finally breathe her own air. But how do you call it freedom when the hands that once held the whip now hold the contract? How do you celebrate sovereignty when the same flag-waving guests at your independence are now the owners of your mines, your banks, your ports, and your decisions? The truth, bitter as it may be, is that the chains of colonialism were not broken. They were polished, and the same empires that drained our blood have returned in new clothes, with new strategies, but with the same hunger. They no longer use armies, they use investments. They no longer build prisons, they build agreements. They no longer carry weapons, they carry briefcases. And while we celebrate our so-called development, they are developing their wealth through our ignorance. Look around this continent, so rich yet so poor. Gold glistens beneath our soil, yet we cannot afford schools. Diamonds shine in our rivers, yet our hospitals collapse. Oil flows through our land, yet our children walk barefoot to class. And when we ask why, they hand us reports, figures, and smiles. But the truth is simple. They have built systems that make extraction legal and silence honorable. They sign contracts that turn our resources into their profit and leave us with environmental scars, debt burdens, and broken promises. This is not development. It is exploitation dressed as progress. They call it foreign direct investment, but it is theft by another name. When a foreign company makes billions in your land and gives your people jobs worth cents, that is not development. That is modern slavery. When they build your roads only to lead to their mines, when they fund your media only to shape your narrative, when they support your elections only to control the outcome, what do you call that? It is not partnership, it is control, and control that is accepted is slavery that is disguised. The worst part is that some among us have become the gatekeepers of this exploitation. We have leaders who sell the future for applause, who trade sovereignty for security, and who celebrate contracts that they themselves do not understand. We have elites who sit at foreign tables while their people sleep hungry. We have educated fools who wear imported suits but cannot write policies that protect their own land. We have forgotten who we are. We have forgotten what was taken from us. And worse, we are helping the thieves build bigger doors into our house. But every generation must face its enemy, and the enemy we face today is not just foreign greed. It is internal cowardice, the fear to say no, the fear to rise, the fear to protect what is ours, and that fear is what keeps us begging. They send us aid worth millions after taking out resources worth billions. They send us food while stealing the soil. They send us textbooks to teach us their language, their history, their greatness, while burying ours. They call that generosity, but it is deception. The hand that gives with one finger and steals with five is not helping you. It is harvesting you. Africa must now open its eyes. Africa must now rise with knowledge, with unity, with purpose. Because as long as we do not own our resources, as long as we do not dictate our trade, as long as we do not write our policies, as long as we depend on those who created our dependency, then we are not free. We are colonies with new names, flags without force, borders without power, but there is still time, not for excuses, not for blame, but for action. We must review every contract, we must audit every agreement. We must look into every deal that enriches outsiders while our people remain in poverty. We must build African institutions that serve African people. We must grow African companies that process our own materials. We must educate African minds to think critically, not to obey systems built to keep them down. We must stop measuring progress by how close we are to the West and start measuring it by how well our people live, eat, grow, and lead. The narrative that Africa needs saving must be rejected. Africa does not need saviors. It needs to save itself from those who came smiling but came stealing. Let us be clear, our land is not for sale. Our destiny is not up for negotiation. Our identity is not a product to be marketed. We have been silent long enough. We have bowed long enough. We have believed lies long enough. It is time to remember that Africa is not weak. Africa is not poor. Africa is not lost. Africa is simply being looted, and when the looting ends, the rising begins. They speak of sovereignty as if it were already ours. They print it in our constitutions. They declare it on television. They chant it during parades. But sovereignty is not a speech. It is not a symbol. It is not a ceremony. Sovereignty is power, real power, to decide, to control, to defend. And I ask you, if a nation cannot make decisions without looking over its shoulder, is it truly sovereign? If foreign ambassadors sit at the center of our political decisions, if foreign troops are stationed on our soil without our command, if our budgets are funded by loans that come with chains, then what kind of sovereignty is that? That is not freedom, that is supervision, that is permission disguised as partnership. Real sovereignty means you can say no, not politely, not in theory, but loudly, firmly, without fear. When a country cannot say no to exploitation, when it cannot refuse a deal that harms its people, when it is afraid of being punished for choosing itself, then that country is not sovereign. It is still in chains. Only now the chains are invisible. They are signed on paper. They are hidden in interest rates. They are locked in military agreements. They are buried in development aid. And Africa has become the continent of consent, consenting to be robbed, to be manipulated, to be disrespected, all in the name of stability and diplomacy. But what good is stability if it is built on submission? What good is peace if it means silence in the face of injustice? Africa must stand up and reclaim what was taken, not just our minerals, not just our land, but our voice. We must no longer wait for validation. We must no longer fear isolation, because the truth is this: nations that respect themselves are eventually respected by others, but those who kneel will always be stepped on. Our sovereignty must be non-negotiable. It must be rooted in the people's will and protected by the people's courage. And to do that, we must unlearn the lies that have been sold to us. They told us that foreign troops in our countries were for our protection. Protection from what? From whom? The truth is, they are not here to protect us. They are here to protect their interests. Their bases are not built to defend Africa. They are built to control Africa. Look at the regions rich in uranium, in gold, in oil. Those are the regions with the heaviest foreign military presence. It is not coincidence. It is strategy, and any leader who questions it is labeled a threat. Any movement that resists it is branded as extremist, but we are not extremists for wanting control over our own land. We are not threats for demanding the right to self-determination. That is not extremism, it is patriotism. It is the basic right of any nation that calls itself free. Sovereignty also means controlling your own economy. Yet African nations continue to trade in currencies they do not control, borrow from institutions they do not own, and export raw materials only to import them back at double the cost. That is not sovereignty. It is dependency, and dependency is the enemy of dignity. As long as we build our future on someone else's terms, we will never rise. We will float, we will survive, but we will never soar. Because no nation ever developed by begging. No people ever became great by copying others. Africa must design its own path, build its own systems, and protect them with unwavering resolve. We must also stop allowing others to choose our friends and enemies. Sovereignty means building alliances based on mutual respect, not fear. If a country supports our development, respects our people, and treats us as equals, then they are welcome, regardless of where they come from. But if they come to dictate, to divide, to exploit, then we must show them the door. We must not be trapped in old rivalries that do not serve us. We must not be pawns in a global chessboard where Africa is always the sacrifice. We must be the players, we must be the board, we must be the rule, makers of our own future, and sovereignty means accountability to the people, not to donors, not to embassies, not to distant capitals. The African leader must wake up every day knowing that his true boss is the people, not foreign investors, not international summits, not foreign banks. If your people are starving, no foreign praise can feed them. If your youth are jobless, no sign you can employ them. If your soil is bleeding, no foreign handshake can heal it. We must govern with truth, speak with courage, and lead with the kind of fire that cannot be extinguished by intimidation. Africa must now stand not with arrogance, but with awareness, not with anger, but with alertness, not with noise, but with non-negotiable clarity, that we are no longer open for exploitation. We are open for liberation. We are no longer beggars at the global table. We are builders of our own. Sovereignty is not given by others. It is built by us, protected by us, lived by us. They often say that the youth are the future of Africa, but what they fail to say is that the future cannot wait forever. The future cannot be postponed while corruption deepens. The future cannot be delayed while our resources vanish. The future cannot be silenced while the same tired hands cling to the reins of power. The truth is clear and cannot be ignored any longer. The time of the African youth is now, not next year, not in the next election cycle, not in the next development plan, but now. Because a continent whose average age is under 20 must no longer be governed by those who see the world through a rear view mirror, a new Africa cannot be built with the same tools that broke it. Across this continent, there are millions of young people with brilliant minds, burning energy, and bold visions. They are not the problem. They are the solution we keep ignoring. They are not lazy. They are not lost. They are not waiting to be rescued. They are waiting to be heard. But how can they speak when their voices are drowned by leaders who fear change? How can they rise when systems are designed to keep them on their knees? How can they innovate when education is broken, funding is absent, and every opportunity is behind a locked door? Yet despite this, they continue. They create businesses with no capital. They learn skills without teachers. They speak truth without protection. That is not weakness. That is resilience, and that resilience must be honored, not suppressed. Africa must recognize that the youth are not just a demographic. They are a revolution waiting to happen. And when they rise, they will not ask for permission. They will not follow the scripts of the past. They will not repeat the mistakes of the old order. They will rewrite the narrative. They will build systems rooted in justice, in dignity, in innovation, and in truth. The tragedy is that many of our current leaders view the youth as a threat to their comfort, a threat to their control, a threat to their outdated ideologies. So they respond with fear. They respond with police. They respond with censorship, but you cannot arrest ideas. You cannot imprison vision. You cannot silence a generation that is connected, informed, and hungry for transformation. The youth do not want empty promises. They want real participation. They want policies that reflect their lives. They want representation that speaks their language. They want systems that respect their struggle. If Africa is to rise, then it must rise on the shoulders of its youth. It must be built by their hands, fueled by their minds, and guided by their courage. This means investing in education that empowers, not just informs. This means creating economies that prioritize local solutions over foreign dependence. This means opening political spaces that are no longer reserved for the same names and the same faces. This means making leadership accessible not by age, but by integrity and vision. And above all, it means trusting our youth, not just to follow, but to lead. We must stop teaching our children that leadership is something to be begged for. We must teach them that leadership is a duty that must be taken with purpose and with principle. We must prepare them to think critically, to question fearlessly, to organize peacefully, and to act boldly. Because without the youth, there is no Africa. Without their voice, our future will be muted. Without their participation, our progress will be an illusion. It is time to tear down the walls that separate generations. The youth must no longer be spoken about. They must speak. They must no longer be managed. They must manage. They must no longer be tokenized. They must be empowered, because they are not the future. They are the present. They are not the next in line. They are already standing at the door, and the door must be opened, or they will break it down. And when they do, may they enter not with vengeance, but with vision, not to destroy, but to rebuild. Not with bitterness, but with boldness. This is not a message of rebellion. It is a message of responsibility, a message to every young African. Your continent needs you, not in 5 years, not after you are approved. Not once you are rich, now, with what you have, with what you know, with your voice, your hands, your mind, and your heart. Because if you do not rise, then who will? If you do not speak, then who will be heard? If you do not lead, then who will take us forward? Africa must now recognize that its greatest untapped resource is not in the ground. It is in its youth. It is time to stand, not later, not someday. Now, we must now speak the truth that too many fear to whisper. Leadership in Africa has become a marketplace where the highest bidder gets the crown and the loudest liar wins the throne. But a continent cannot rise when its leaders are for sale. A nation cannot breathe when its lungs are choked by corruption. We have become witnesses to a tragedy where positions of service have become seats of wealth, where elections are auctions and loyalty is sold to the one who offers the fattest envelope. But Africa cannot afford leaders who are owned. We need leaders who are rooted, leaders who stand when others kneel, who speak when others whisper, who refuse to trade justice for comfort or truth for applause. The tragedy of Africa is not that we lack resources, it is not that we lack talent, it is that we have too often lacked leadership that loves the people more than it loves power. We have men in high offices who build fences to keep the people out instead of bridges to bring the people in. We have ministers who steal the medicine from their own hospitals and presidents who fly to foreign hospitals while their citizens die in silence. We have officials who smile in international conferences. While their villages drown in poverty and darkness, and we call them excellency, we call them honorable, but there is no honor in betrayal, no excellence in selling your people's soul. What we need now is not more promises, we need principle. We need men and women who cannot be bought, who do not tremble at the sight of foreign interests, who do not bow for visas or dance for dollars. We need leaders who understand that integrity is not an option. It is a necessity. A nation without integrity is a body without bones. It cannot stand, it cannot fight, it cannot defend itself. And so we must look beyond titles, we must look beyond speeches. We must begin to measure leadership by impact, not by invitation lists or photo opportunities. True leadership is sacrifice. It is the willingness to walk through fire so others may find light. It is the decision to speak hard truths, knowing they may cost you your comfort. It is the resolve to do what is right, even when it is not rewarded. And above all, it is loyalty to the people, not to the party, not to foreign interests, not to personal ambition. The leader who cannot say no to a bribe will never say yes to justice. The leader who hides his wealth while people sleep hungry is not a servant, he is a predator. We must also understand that clean leadership is not weakness, it is strength. It is not a soft heart, it is a steel backbone. And we must raise a generation that sees public service not as a shortcut to riches, but as a sacred trust. The days of billionaires emerging from government salaries must come to an end, because while they grow their bank accounts, they shrink the nation. While they buy foreign homes, our people lose their ancestral land. While they send their children abroad, ours study under trees with no chalk and no hope enough. Enough. Africa needs leaders who eat last, leaders who listen first, leaders who walk the dusty roads, not just ride in convoys, leaders who stand by the people when the cameras are gone, leaders who do not speak in riddles, but in truth, and leaders who understand that one day they will stand not before voters or donors, but before history. And history is not kind to those who betrayed their people for fleeting luxury. Our continent needs to look in the mirror and ask itself, how long will we keep applauding thieves? How long will we cheer those who fail us? How long will we remain loyal to those who see us only as stepping stones? A new Africa requires new leadership, not in age, but in integrity, not in skin, but in spirit, not in power, but in purpose. And such leadership must rise from every village, every slum, every school, every struggle. It must rise from the sweat of farmers, the sacrifice of teachers, the voice of students, the resolve of women, and the courage of the youth. Because leadership is not a position, it is a mindset, and that mindset must be planted in every heart that dares to believe that Africa deserves better. And let no one tell you that such leaders do not exist. They are here among us, they are speaking, they are acting, they are rising, and they will not be silenced, they will not be bought, they will not be broken. And when they stand, Africa will rise with them. Africa will rise not with noise, but with clarity, not with chaos, but with conviction, not with vengeance, but with vision.